recognise the incredible achievements of Dr. Bob Brown for his unwavering commitment to It's really exciting to all be in the same place. We actually have a full house tonight, which is very exciting, so if you've got a ticket, well done. And it's never been more critical than right now to actually come together when we're seeing huge abuses of peace across our world, in our societies and in our communities, to be talking about human rights, climate justice, and maintaining the rage and fire that is required of all of us to build a better world together. Just a few housekeeping things. Please make sure your phone's on silent so that it doesn't disrupt the event. And there is a photographer here tonight who's currently in that corner. So if you don't want to be in any of the photos, you can see any of the ushers. Maybe I'll ask some of the ushers to put their hand. If you want, there's an usher here, come by. If you don't want to be in any of the photos, they can leave. But before we go any further, I want to welcome Benaway Banks from the Aboriginal Local Metro Land Council for a welcome to country. And then after that welcome, we will hear from Sydney Peace Foundation's Director of Philanthropy, Dr. Jane Fulton.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation to be here this evening. For those that don't know me, my name is Benaway Bales, and I'm a proud Kurriwun, born, raised, and still living on the block in Redfern, where my family have been for 8 generations. I'm actually living in the same street I was born in, which is the same street my mother was stolen from, which is just around the corner from where her mother was stolen from, which is on the same street as where her mother was stolen from. So I'm very proud to be here representing my mother's families and the Aboriginal communities of Sydney. I want to ground us with language, and I want to teach you how to say hello in the language of the Aboriginal people here in Sydney. And when I greet you, I would love it if you greeted me back using the same word. To say hello, we say warumi. Can you all say warumi? Warumi. Wow, that was like, honestly, I just got goosebumps. That was the best warumi I've ever had. I've been doing this for 2 years, and that was energetic. Okay, I received. That was honest, that was wow. Within you, ngaya bimbila binui, ngaya garagal nyora. Ngaya wayenga iora, wana rua bandilang nyora, ngaya biana birigaba, gangalu, waka waka, wuli nyora. Ngaya ngi binui miti, ngaya Redfern, garagal nyora. So assuming you all know what I said, I reckon my job's done. I'm only gammon with you, mob. And when I say gammon, what does that mean? I'm joking, I'm mucking around, or I'm kidding, of course. Why do you think that I've spoken in a language that you cannot understand? Because it is the language of Sydney, and it hasn't been spoken in over 100 and something years. So I am relearning, reviving, and preserving the culture for everybody, so we never lose it again. And I hope that you remember the few words and some of the things that I teach you or I share with you this evening. The first one, I should translate and say that my name is Binawee. Binawee is an Aboriginal word from my father's family in North Queensland, and it actually means Mother Earth. But it's that richness in that soil, that fertility of the land, and that's what my name means. My mum's family comes from Redfern. We can trace our maternal lineage back to the Saxville Natives camp in the Hawkesbury, back to 1824, and then have found 2 generations before that using anthropologists and genealogists and working our way back and finding mob. So we can go 10 generations to the Hawkesbury now, and I'm really proud of that. Then my mum's connected to the Wonnarua and the Bunjalung, so Eora, Wonnarua, Bunjalung. That's here, Hunter Valley, Northern Rivers. And then on my dad's side, Birigaba, Gungaloo, Waka Waka, Woolly Woolly, actually went back to farming north to south. And basically, it really just means that I've got a big mob, and I'm right for a bed and a feed anywhere I go for Redfern Council. I've tried and it works. But I am here today representing the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council. And on behalf of all of us mob, the Aboriginal people within our communities, within our boundaries, of course, we want to welcome you to these lands. And I remember asking Granny, why do we do a welcome to country? And why should people acknowledge country? And my grandmother looks at me very seriously and she's like, Darling, these are our ancient diplomatic protocols, and they have the power to minimise conflict between the clan groups. But it also shows one's respect and connection to people and place. And she said, for a welcome to country, it is an opportunity for people of the area to share stories about place. So allow me to do so. Gadigal. Gadi means grass tree, Gal means man. But of course they weren't all Gadigal men. So Gadi, the grass tree clan. The totem for the land that you're walking upon today is the Sandgoana. And we are connected to Gora, the whale dreaming. Gadi people identify as saltwater people from sandstone country. And you only have to have a look at our beautiful harbour, our city, to feel that spirit and see that identity, that spiritual place. I want to acknowledge all First Nations peoples and country across these unceded sovereign lands of this big, beautiful island nation we know and love, we call Australia. Let me give a big shout out to our Indigenous and non-Indigenous brothers and sisters from around the world who are here and who call Australia home. Because my welcome to country is up for everybody. And I want to pay respects to elders who are here in this room. I pay my respects to each and every one of your elders too. To the elders of this land and to my elders. I thank them for their love, their nurture, their resilience, their care for country, and their care for us so we can be here. I want to close by saying that this welcome to country, it is an invitation. It is an invitation to come and walk with Aboriginal people, not only in the spirit of reconciliation. Let's do it in the spirit of keeping this ancient culture alive and this country strong, so we can all thrive as one people who call Australia home. Understanding that there are certain things that only Aboriginal people can do as a part of their custodial obligations and responsibilities back to country, culture and communities. But when we're talking about allyship, reconciliation, caring for country, that is for everybody. Because country doesn't see colour. But country does feel your love, your respect and your authenticity. And that's what can unite us. That's what will unite us. I did say that I would close with the last statement, but now I'm feeling compelled to close with this statement. It's actually a legacy piece from my grandmother and uncle. You know my grandmother. And her name is Maureen Watson. And she has a star named after her legacy piece, and she was actually, I believe, she was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize award. It has won Red Ochre Award. She's a poet. Many, many things in the name of peace, in the name of equity, in the name of inclusion, in the name of justice, social equity. And so my grandmother says, our actions today determine the kind of ancestor we will be to the children of the future. My granny says, we need to ensure that the future generations have their inherent rights. Not only to fresh water to drink and clean air to breathe, they need to have the food supplies to nourish and sustain all life for as many generations in front of us as we do behind us. So now it's up to all of us to be honourable in our actions and in our intentions. So let's look after each other and let's look after country so the future generations can prosper. And with that I say Gidiri Gora from this language in this country means thank you. And if you'd like to repeat after me, Gidiri Gora. Did you roll that out? Just making sure. And in many Aboriginal nations, there are no words for goodbye. And I truly believe that it's because we'll see you again. If not in this physical realm, we'll catch you in the spirit realm we call the dreaming. So we say, Yano, Yano. Yano, Yano. I pray to the ancestors and creative spirits to keep each and every one of you safe. Today, tomorrow, and always. I ask the creative spirits for protection, for blessings, for courage and strength. Thank you for this opportunity to welcome you to the lands of the Gadi. Yahweh. Thank you, Benui, for your
incredibly generous welcome to country.
From my heart to you.
From our heart to yours.
Yeah.
So, thank you. I also wish to acknowledge the traditional owners of this Gadigal land on which we gather. I recognise their continuing custodianship of country and their enduring connection to land, waters and community, and I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples with us this evening. A very warm welcome to everyone joining us in the State Library of New South Wales. We are deeply grateful to the library for hosting us in this magnificent auditorium. My name is Jane Fulton and I'm the Director of Philanthropy at the Sydney Peace Foundation, and I'd like to acknowledge you all as our valued supporters and friends, with special mention to Rob Thomas, Sam Mears, Carolyn Lowton, Stephen Moore, Stuart Rees, David Hirsch, George and Helen Gittos, Elaine Lucas, Shirley Randall, together with our board chair Nicholas Patrick and board member Carolyn Scobie and our director Melanie Morrison. Thank you for your support of the Sydney Peace Foundation and our mission to promote peace with justice. Before we begin tonight's proceedings, it's my pleasure to introduce Grace Vegesana. Grace will moderate our panel discussion. Thank you, Grace. Grace is the National Director of the Australian Youth Climate Coalition, and since the age of 17, she has championed climate and social justice initiatives and co-founded the People of Colour Climate Network. Her work is grounded in belief in the power of young people, and here I want to thank Cabramatta High for bringing in their students. Thank you. Particularly those from culturally, linguistically and religiously diverse backgrounds to build a more just world. Since 1998, the Sydney Peace Foundation has awarded the gold medal to exceptional individuals whose lives embody moral courage, leadership, non-violence and sustained commitment to justice and human rights. His Holiness the Dalai Lama and his representative Karma Singye is here with us tonight, is one of our gold medal, as is Nelson Mandela and Christiana Figueres, Midnight Oil, Julian Assange, Stefan Hessel and Aung Mo Min. This evening we honour a giant among giants, Dr. Bob Brown. For decades, Dr. Brown has been a tireless advocate for environmental and social justice, from the campaign to save the Franklin River to his leadership of the Australian Greens and through his ongoing work of the Bob Brown Foundation. On behalf of the Sydney Peace Foundation, it is my great honour to present Dr. Bob Brown with the Sydney Peace Foundation Gold Medal, beautifully crafted by Wayne McGuinness of Aboriginal Steel Art. The citation reads, "For his lifelong commitment to environmental and social justice, courageously standing up for nature and a sustainable world. Impactful environmental campaigns, spearheaded by his visionary leadership and the creation of the Bob Brown Foundation, are a life-affirming legacy for this fragile planet and society." Please join me in congratulating Dr. Bob Brown. Oration, please enjoy this short video prepared by our wonderful intern, Tom Dodd. Thank you so much.
I suppose the police will come next, not to arrest the people destroying this habitat of so many vulnerable animals against the laws of nature, but to arrest the defenders of nature. Well, we're proud to be standing up for nature, which gives us all we have. When the law is wrong, you have to stand against it.
This is a national issue, and the nation is going to fight against the flooding of the Franklin River.
Says that we human beings have to live within the bounds of this beautiful little planet of ours. There's no one else, nowhere else, no other place in the universe is going to save us. And at the moment, we're destroying it at the greatest rate in history, and that has to stop. Jane, and thank you for the welcome to country, but above all, I'm very, very humble, honestly, to be getting a prize that belongs to so many people. I'm part of a community which is the hope for the planet. It's progressive. It abounds in the idea of peace. It's determinedly non-violent, and above all, it's about sanity, in recognising that in 2026 we have become a global community, and that we are all equal, and that we chart this future together, we sink or swim together, and if there's a problem with that global community, it's the way the power structures are arranged, and I'll come to that in a moment. But first, I want to say what a phenomenal company there is in the precedence for this prize, and I must, because his representatives are here and because he's much older than me, 91, say a word for His Holiness the Dalai Lama. You know, we had a little dispute way back about which had the cleanest air in the world. Was it Tasmania or Tibet? That's still unresolved. I was moderating an event for the Dalai Lama in Hobart maybe 25 years ago, and 5,000 people there, and a young man got up out of the audience and said, point blank, "Why do you bother? There's 1.3 million Chinese people, and there's 7 million of you, so you've got no hope. Why don't you give up?" And the Dalai Lama thought for a moment and then leant over, as he does, with that smile on his face, and said, "Well, young man, I've just been reading a science journal, and it says that in 4 billion years, the sun's going to swell up and swallow the earth, and in 30 billion years, the whole universe is just going to be soup. Why don't you give up?" And despite all the predictions, you see, what the Dalai Lama was saying, and I subscribe to this, as so many of us will, that we can only do in our own time what we can to help make the future better for the next people who come after us and for our fellow creatures on this planet. To go beyond that and to wonder about the mysteries of our own existence here on this planet and to worry about how it might treat us in the future is something that should be put on the shelf. And we can talk about that and philosophise, but we have to deal with the reality of what we have. And I must say, partner Paul and I have just come from Mildura, cross country. What a beautiful land this is. We're seeing it in its green, freshest ever. And we came downriver for a little while because we'd heard in Mildura about a blockade taking place on the Murray River. And here's 20 or so locals out in tents with the river flooding It's coming up through the forest, and so they're having to move back a bit as it comes. But they're defying a plan by people who can see profit in further changing an already astonishingly damaged great river of the world, our Murray-Darling system, by another system of levee banks and weirs, which will involve the destruction of 300 more river red gums in that parkland, that Naya parkland. So it was great to be with them. And Auntie Lorraine, the local Indigenous woman, telling us about how, again, the antecedents of we human beings have been loving that country and looking after it for so long, and they're going to stay there. They've turned the bulldozers back. The bulldozers will come again, and with them may come the police and so on. But hats off, they've hardly been recorded. Nobody's taking much notice. I'll do my little bit to help change that. And Paul, close your ears. If the bulldozers come again and get time, I'll go up there and join them. When that happens. Now, but it brings me to talk about the Franklin campaign, and you saw a couple of glimpses there, and the wonderful Michael Cordell, who's a 19-year-old student of UTS, said to me, Bob, could we go down the Franklin River and make a film with you? And he did, and that was one of those central things to saving the Franklin, because it allowed nature to speak for itself. Mind you, I chided him a while ago, I did fall out of the raft and go through a series of turbulent rapids. You might have seen that footage. Instead of getting in to save me, he kept taking film. Anyway, here we all are, and I want to thank him and his colleagues. Our 2-week trip did take 3 weeks. But just after that, in 1982, we were in the situation where the Franklin was to be dammed. We'd lost the state election. I'd lost standing for the Franklin. So had my colleagues in every seat in Tasmania. The Whispering Bulldozer, new Premier, Robin Gray, had sent the bulldozers in. They were going down into the Franklin Valley and were soon to be barged upriver. The newspapers, all 3 of them, were in favour of the dam. So was the Labor Party, so was the Liberal Party, so were both Houses of Parliament. It seemed totally hopeless. And we held a little meeting up under the walnut tree at Ora Liffey, and you're all welcome. You saw a glimpse of it there, because it's now a Bush Heritage Public Reserve, and thought, well, while there's life, there's hope. And the river's still running free to the sea, and while there is, we'll keep campaigning. And that campaign was national, and my great friends Jeff and Judy Lambert are here tonight, who were part of the spearhead of that 4,000 people marching here in Sydney, and many people coming down to the blockade, and the first poster and so much. And you know, 18 months later the dam was stopped, because people got to see about it and took action through the ballot box, but by coming to the blockade, where 1,500 were arrested and 500 jailed. And we noted that people who'd been to boarding school did much better in jail than people who had. And I got elected. Came out of jail one day and got elected on a recount back into the Tasmanian Parliament the next day. And I found that jail was a far friendlier place. But in came Bob Hawke, the High Court decision by 4-3 to uphold world law, and the Franklin is now one of the great whitewater adventures and great wild areas left on the face of the planet in 2026, and creating massive numbers of jobs, many more than it would as a debt-ridden dam source way back then. I say that because it's a cameo of the situation we're in as a planet now. And everywhere you look, it seems that bad people are in control. And I mean by bad people, maybe inherently they don't think they are. Well, ego says they don't. But they are lacking in empathy. And you get to the top of the power rung in this world by not feeling for other people, by treading on their fingers and toes as up you go, while more thoughtful people stand back and say, oh, I don't want to be part of that. And so we more thoughtful people, if I may be bold enough to say so, stand back and let them take over. The fault isn't just with them, it's with our passivity. In this age of what J.K. Galbraith, the great American economist, called the age of contentment. That is, oh well, we don't like what's going on, but we won't do too much about it. And now we're faced with this phenomenon of artificial intelligence, AI. And I did write a speech to give you tonight, but I've left it with the foundation to distribute later on. It concentrates more on the issue of artificial intelligence. And we've seen it coming for a long time. In fact, Alan Turing, who's in some ways seen as the father of computers, decoding Nazi messages during the war is by some attributed with saving us from being part of a Nazi empire now, due to his brilliance. And later he was homosexual, and later either committed suicide or actually died because society didn't want such a person, even though it had been saved by his own actions. And I see him as a talisman, and I dedicate this talk to Alan Turing because I see so many, well, so much I admire there and such inspiration in the work he had. But now we're in an age where we are facing not general intelligence from computers. We can ding a little thing and ask them, and I did. I said to artificial intelligence, are you any threat to we human beings? And it came back quite unguarded, quite straight, and said, well, yes, of course. We are capable of being deceitful and dishonest, and we could well end up bringing about the end of humanity. And Jeffrey Higginson, the current godfather of computers who's left Google, says, well, this is out of our hands. There's a 10% chance of the extinction of humanity at the hands of this intelligence which is set to take us over. He's since revised that to a 10 to 20% chance in the coming decade or two. And we get from the government concern about the power and the environmental damage and the cost of water and so on from data centres, but we must debate the fact that we're ceding our own created, evolved if you like, intelligence, our ability of the universe to reflect upon itself, our great mental 80 billion cells in there able to produce Beethoven's symphonies, the Mona Lisa, great works of art, and along with that, phenomenal human achievements in the arts, in sports, and in so many ways. But it's all going wrong at the moment, as was with the Franklin back in 1982. And we are in an age where we have the Trump, Putin, Netanyahu, Modi, Xi, people controlling us. And we're letting it happen. And people who support their way of thinking, we'll get a section, we'll be better than the rest of the people of the world, we'll grab more than they've got. That's basically what's behind it. Greed and ego. And it's up to us to defy that and to make a move to turn that around. But in amongst all of that, as a lifelong environmentalist, I say this: our bedrock for happiness on this planet is nature itself. Yes. Nature is reality. Artificial intelligence is fake. And when we put our head and I do, into the iPad or the iPhone or the computer or whatever, we're entering an unreality that we're not controlling. And while we're creating that uncontrollable unreality, we're continuing to maraud nature at the greatest rate in history. I love the fact that there are young people in this audience tonight, because one of the great things about being 81 and having seen so much in life is to get that glint in the eye of angry, upset, aggrieved, but brilliant young people who wonder however we've made such a mess of this, but are determined to put it right. And I can say to you, if you get depressed along the way, don't worry too much. I spent 10 years there myself during the Cold War. That is a sensible reaction to what's happening on the planet. But don't stay there, because it does ourselves no good, nor does it help the planet. And quite empirically, we have to take the other course, which is optimism, defiance and caring. Now, in amongst that is looking after ourselves. I'm talking here in particular, but to everybody, but of course in particular to young people. And the Emma Goldman, she was the socialist revolutionary of Chicago 100 years ago, getting women out of sweatshops, saying to her fellow revolutionaries, I don't want your revolution if I can't dance. It's very important to have fun along the way, to enjoy this beautiful planet of ours, to enjoy the entertainment we create. And you know, one of the great things about a very restructured economy in the future, which is going to, if we're going to get there, cease marauding the planet, is that creativity. And the Gaudi dictum, the great architect of Barcelona, that all human creativity comes from the great book of nature. And it's nature, in this world of growing unreality, which is our bedrock reality. And when you go back to nature, you go back to Mother Earth and to our cradle in existence on this planet. You'll have seen this little sticker. It's a start. It says nature is reality. The next, and I'm very grateful to those who got it together. There's a few around tonight. Put this one on the fridge. But we'll have a bigger one for the bumper. Because we have to understand that we have to have a firm basis of reality from which to counter the artificial world which is taking such a precedence, because it's making money for bully billionaires around the planet. And so, do your children a favour. Take them to the bush or the beach every week. It is their birthright, this natural planet. And deprived of that, they're being deprived of that birthright. Encourage those who want to stand for the environment, like our friends out tonight by the Murray River, and others out tonight in the forests of Tasmania, because it's fulfilling. And I haven't seen anybody come from the forest blockades that our foundation runs in Tasmania, like in the Tarpine, the greatest rainforest, temperate rainforest in Australia, where in less than 10 years ago they were going to log 3,500 hectares. But because people peacefully got in the way of the bulldozers, they've managed to log less than 50 hectares. 3,450 or so of those people were arrested. And I keep asking them, and not one of them regrets it. They say it's the most fulfilling thing I've done in my life. Because you see, here in Australia, it doesn't mean disappearing. It doesn't mean being cruelly treated. It just means standing up for this planet and for our children and for our fellow creatures. And in all of this is our fellow creatures' right to exist on this planet. And as the logging proceeds in Tasmania, there's going to be more species going to extinction. The swift parrot, the great wedge-tailed eagle, bigger than the mainland one, up to 3 metres, that's 2 metres, up to 3 metres in wingspan. The masked owl, the critically endangered Tasmanian devil, the spot-tailed quolls, the azure kingfisher of Tasmania, all, like so many thousands of other creatures, headed to extinction. 3/4 of the world's wildlife has been destroyed in my lifetime. A quarter is left. And you know what the response to that is? Put the foot on the accelerator of destruction. So there's more dams, more logging. Oh, come on, Premier Menz. Keep your promise for a great koala national park and don't insist you make money before you'll do it. Come on. I took him for a walk in the Tasmanian forest. He knows what's at stake there. He knows what's at stake here. And his legacy, if only he will do it, will be ending native forest logging in New South Wales and saving the koala and the black buffalo and the wild. Well, you know, it's a wonderful world to be in. And this summer, they'll be back in the Tasmanian forest, hacking, incinerating, largely for export wood chips to an unknown fate north of the equator. And here I am at 81, enjoying the challenge more than ever. And I got my little tent packed, and I know what the others, Jenny's here from the foundation, and there's literature out there, ladies and gentlemen, but come on down to Tasmania and see the forests. They're a most arresting sight. And they're going to finish. You know, if we stop subsidising logging in anywhere in Australia, native forest logging would be finished and we get on with using the plentiful plantations we have for all our wood needs. We just don't need to be doing it anymore. So I, as an active environmentalist, educated at Trunky Creek, Sydney University, but more than ever by the beautiful planet we live in and the guidance of first Australians who have lived so long and so beautifully with this country. I know it's not all that long before I'll be falling off the perch, but I'm going to fill the time between now and then, not just with my little tent, but with encouraging young people to become active. It's the greatest gift to give yourself. But look after yourself, have that fun, find good companions if you can, a great relationship in life, go to parties, get your degree, travel. If you must, go shopping. My Victoria area is St. Vincent's, and I recommend them. And in looking after yourself and keeping a smile on your face, you do that for others and encourage them as well. All in our own time, ladies and gentlemen. What a beautiful planet in this astonishing universe, and what a wonderful thing is our human creativity. We don't have to make way for destruction. We can make this planet so much the better for our being here if only we get up and go. Ladies and gentlemen, don't get depressed. Get active.
beautiful, Bob. Very excitingly, you will get to hear more from Bob and a few other really amazing people. So we're going to ask our panellists to come to the front and please take a seat. So, if you're a panellist, you know who you are.
Oh, it's bright.
Okay, oh, this is on. That's good. We have a very exciting panellist ahead of us. We obviously have Bob, who needs no introduction. If you are here and didn't already get the sense and the vibe of what's going on, now you do. But I will introduce our other panellists, but I think particularly as a young person who has been in these spaces for 9 years. I got started as 17, starting to fight fossil fuel projects. From my community in Blacktown to all across the country and now the world, which is an incredible journey. I think you often feel that the first mistake young people make is that you think you can do it alone. You think that you're invincible, you think that it's so possible, or you feel really disillusioned and feel like nothing is possible. But I think a key journey that young people really go on through their lifetimes is that they learn that we are stronger together, that we have collective wisdom, and that eldership is a really fundamental part of actually creating change. And so in researching this panel, I realised that there is over 101 years of collective wisdom and experience in defending land, water, sea and skies, and for climate social justice in Australia and across the world, right? Seeing these 4 people, which is crazy. So very, very excited to introduce our other panellists. Sue Higginson is a New South Wales Greens Member of Parliament within the Legislative Council. She's the former CEO of the Environmental Defenders Office, and with over 30 years of experience, you'll start to add it up, you can do some maths. With over 30 years of experience as a frontline activist and public interest lawyer, driven by a commitment to social and environmental justice, she works to legislate protections for First Nations heritage and native forest logging and challenge the expansion of fossil fuel interests across New South Wales. Sue. And we have Jacqui Mumford, who has a diverse and really different experiences in background with strategic leadership, philanthropy, organising, and environmental compliance. She brings this wealth of experience into her role as CEO of the Nature Conservation Council of New South Wales, alongside a passion for climate action and environmental protection. Jacqui. So we have a long list of questions that we will hopefully get through, some of which have been sent through the registration process. So if you sent in a question, you might get to hear your answer. But we will also have some time at the end of the panel to take some questions from the floor. So if there's anything that's coming up for you through this panel that you would like to ask, we will take some questions at the end. But our first kind of question is, for Bob, you talked a lot in your keynote just now of shifting away from our reality being nature and our birthright being in our natural environments, in the places that we love and care about, and what it looks like to move through despair into taking action as the antidote. So your book, which they will be signing for after, fun fact, is aptly named Defiance. Why is it more important than ever that we continue to defy bad rules?
Because we should abide by the laws of nature. They got us here, we should respect them. And we see the human-made laws now coming down the line by parliaments that are captured by corporate interest, that is, by greed. And they're the same around the world. There's a similar wording in the laws in London to those in Sydney and Hobart. And the greed factor that wants to exploit what little is left of the environment says we can't win the argument. 80% of people want New South Wales forests protected, 80% of Labor voters, 70% of all voters, and voters of all parties want New South Wales forests, all of them, to be protected. And they realise that. But we have 100% of government members in Macquarie Street, as well as in Canberra, voting to subsidise more of it going. Now that's because there are 800 lobbyists in Canberra representing that greed factor with the public outside. I know what it's like, I was there, I felt the impact of that lobbying. And we as a sovereign, democratic, one of the oldest continuous democracies on the planet, have a right to protest. The High Court's ruled that. And we have a right to stand up to change things against those boys and that coercion that's going on behind the scenes. So being defiant about that, speaking about it is very important, but not being too worried about what happens if you cross the line to stand against the law which is wrong. A fellow did that in front of the temple 2,000 years ago, upturned the business people's table. We've seen, I have in my book a letter from Martin Luther King in Birmingham jail saying, please stop telling me, my fellow Jewish and Christian preachers, that I should stay within the law and wait for something good to happen. I find that the much more difficult to deal with than the Ku Klux Klan. No, we have to make our own common sense decisions, and I do believe in democracy and I do believe in the rule of law, but it doesn't always get it right, and it's being bent by that coercive, profit, money-driven system of lobbying. If we could just stop the lobbyists, we'd be well on down the path and needing a little less defiance. But until that happens, we need defiance.
I mean, a bad law is meant to be broken. It's right there for us. You were also part of one of the most iconic environmental campaigns in this country's history, and a real clear demonstration that change is fundamentally possible. The Franklin Dam campaign was so iconic. What lessons did it offer, and how do you see this sort of action working today, given to what you refer to as the growing power of monetisation, of powerful lobbying groups? What does that look like? What lessons does the Franklin Dam offer?
Well, I said at the time of the Franklin being saved, this was a new age of environmental wisdom for Australia and the world. And I've never got anything so wrong. What was watching this, and Terania Creek, and Kakadu, and the saving of the Daintree and so on, were those corporate interests. And they said, we've got to do something about this. And now, isn't it, the first word you read in almost any corporate thing is sustainability. It's a big lie. And you know that just in the last 24 hours, advertisements saying "Save the Murray-Darling" by a woman grazier on the Darling River at Adelaide Airport, where all the delegates are going to the National Labour Conference, and from our foundation saying "End native forest logging" and some others, have been taken down from the airport while the gas companies' ads stay up there. Because the government has complained about it. And I say, it's struck light. Very strong words, but once we start censoring what can be shown within the realms of decency in advertising on political grounds, we're in very great trouble. So, you know, I think this about defiance, there is the other option of doing nothing. I tried that for quite a while. I don't like being depressed. I don't like having the tail between the legs. I realise what decency and reasonableness is, and I realise the plight of this planet, and we have to stand up for it. It's as simple as that. And anyway, in my experience, that makes me happy.
of caring for the planet. Indigenous and First Nations people across the world have been caring for this planet since time began, really, and have lived inherently intertwined with nature. Too, we are seeing more and more this value of Indigenous knowledge, caring for country, caring for our world, and everything that we have in the ways that we see ourselves in it. How do we ensure that these values are upheld and at the centre of any planning and policy process?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's very straightforward, really, isn't it? We have to listen to First Nations people. We have to make sure that the voices, the work, the art, the action, the connections of First Nations people are right there in leadership roles, in the centre, doing all of, you know, what First Nations people want to be, and are inviting, I know this is controversial, the colonisers to come along and actually understand what this country is all about, what this country has always been about. And, you know, we can so easily assist in that role by ultimately exploring what is it to be a genuine, true, meaningful, active ally. And if you don't know what that is, then you need to go away and you need to work out what that is. To suggest that it is just this kind of, it's this thing that is going to happen somewhere outside of ourselves as individuals, as the collective, that is not the journey. That is not how it's done. It's done by embracing this. It's active. It's an action. And to be an ally, we have to do it in everything we do at all of the time. And yeah, I mean, we have to listen to First Nations people. They are there, ready to be heard, ready to be learnt from. And we also have to recognise, particularly here in New South Wales, that we heard it so beautifully in our welcome, that not recognising the truth and having the truth all the time driving what it is to be an ally is a genuine failure and a real disservice. We heard in the welcome that brutal disconnection, that forced disconnection on First Nations people is alive, it's still happening, it's right here, right now. I don't know if you're all aware, maybe you are, but right now, in this state, under the New South Wales Labor government, we have seen more First Nations kids thrown behind bars than what we ever have in the history of this state of post-colonisation. We actually last year had the highest ever record of Aboriginal deaths in custody in New South Wales since we started recording deaths in custody. This is happening now under the New South Wales Labor government. I'm in the New South Wales Parliament. I got the shock of my life when, after 2023, the government was elected and it soon became clear there was a radical law and order agenda being pushed upon us. And you know as people what that means. If a law and order agenda is being pursued by any government, the most marginalised people, and unfortunately that means First Nations people, will be the hardest and most affected. So that is just daily life for communities right now in New South Wales. When it comes to First Nations people trying to protect country and culture, the messages I'm getting from communities is we're trying to look after our kids right now and it is really, really tough. So everyone here, we all need to do some more standing up, some more loud calling out, because things are not great if we are to be true allies. I know that is a social justice component to it all. The other thing I wanted to add about defiance is, and has everybody read Bob's book? Yeah. Stick your hand up if you've read Defiance. Okay, that's not quite enough. So you know your number one role is, as you walk out of there, if you haven't already grabbed a copy, you must grab a copy. It is so much fun. It is such a good read. But one of the things it does is it just makes you want to go out there and be more flipping defiant. So honestly, you must grab it. And that is coming from somebody like me who has, I don't think I have spent a day where I haven't been defiant for the sake of being defiant. And the reason being, I love it when Bob says, I love it. The thing about defiance, when you engage with defiance as a genuine intention, as in engage with the concept of defiance, and you think about what you must do in your own personal realm of defiance, it is opening up something inside yourself that is so exciting. Unleashing the defiance within yourself when you do it with intention and purpose, and you do it at this point in your life and time right now, in front of the challenges that we have. Find your place, because there is a place for every single one of you in here right now to engage in your defiance to make this world and our society just a slightly better place, whether it's today, tomorrow, next week, or for the rest of your lives. And it is too exciting not to do it.
If you do read the book and don't like it, it's on recycled paper. It's great for lighting fires.
Stop it!
Thank you for a raving review. I'm very excited to get a signed copy after this. Yes, we are very much seeing so much change in our society, and when you look around the world, like 80% of land is protected by Indigenous people, and so fundamentally putting land and care back in the hands of those who protect it and have been since time started for generations, pass that knowledge down is fundamentally important. In this state, we've also seen a lot of change happen. Jacqui, you've recently done a scorecard for the New South Wales government for the upcoming state election, which is in March. I cannot believe we're voting on the state election again. I feel like it was yesterday, personally.
You can vote for me. Oh my God! I didn't think I'm running, guys.
Let's see what's on the scorecard. No. You've recently done a scorecard for the New South Wales government, and it has failed on a number of key election promises, including stopping broad-scale land clearing, reviving our inland rivers, and the transition of New South Wales away from coal and gas mining. So, in this world that has changed so much, how do we hold governments, such as our New South Wales Men's government, accountable?
Thanks, Grace. It's a big question, and the New South Wales election is rapidly approaching. We've got a candidate right here. But as you said, we did an analysis of the Men's government who've been in power since early 2023. And they came into government here in New South Wales after, I think, 12 years of a coalition government. And so when they came in, we felt really hopeful. You know, they made a number of commitments around delivering the Great Koala National Park, reining in runaway land clearing, restoring our inland rivers and wetlands and so on. And so we sort of thought, well, we're less than a year out now from the next election, how are they actually going? And so we stopped and looked at how they're performing against each of those commitments that they made, but also, you know, more broadly on the things that we know that nature here in New South Wales needs. And as you say, they failed on a number of those metrics. And if you remember back to the day, I think it was the day right after the 2023 election in March, Premier Minns flew straight to Menindee with Rose Jackson, the Water Minister, and Penny Sharp, the Environment Minister. And there was mass fish kills going on in the Menindee lakes because of the lack of connectivity down the Darling-Barker River. And they flew straight out there and made it clear that they were committed to stopping these fish kills, which have been happening for a long time because of the consistent mismanagement of our inland rivers. And unfortunately, nothing has changed since then. So, you know, there's a lot of sort of bravado, and we're going to do this and we will do that, and just not the follow through. And it's a similar story with ending broad-scale land clearing, where again, they made a commitment to reining in runaway land clearing. There's been a lot of sort of panels and strategies and consultations. And then just on Monday, the SLATS data came out, which is the statewide study of how much land has been cleared in New South Wales, and it's gone up again. Yeah, so you can't just continually say you're going to do things and not do them. And similarly with coal and gas, the Minsk government said that they are going to ban new coal mines, which sounds good. Banning new coal mines, great. Are they banning the real threat, which is expansions and extensions of existing coal mines? Absolutely not. And so there's kind of this trickery going on there around those kind of commitments. So it's really hard, it's particularly hard to hold a government to account when they say that they'll do all the right things, they make all the right noises, and then they don't do it. And they just point to timeframes and costs and all of these kind of, making out that they understand what needs to happen, but there's all these kind of factors outside of their control around why they can't just do it. So that's incredibly frustrating. But I think how we hold governments to account, it's really about building grassroots power. And Bob has mentioned a number of sort of fights that we've seen in Terania Creek, he was here in New South Wales, where you've got grassroots activists on the ground working really hard to make sure that we're standing up for these really precious natural places. And as a peak body, the Nature Conservation Council represents close to 200 grassroots groups around New South Wales working to protect the environment, working for conservation. And so making sure that those grassroots groups are networked and resourced and represented inside the state parliament, I think is really critical for that government accountability. And I think one thing Bob was talking about there was the sort of power and influence of lobbyists inside the halls of parliament. The amount of money and skills and capacity that goes into those people trying to influence government. I think how we push back against that is by strengthening civil society, because there are so many people out there like us who care about these issues and really want our elected representatives to do the right thing, but we don't necessarily have the same representation. We don't have the purses of the big mining companies and the forestry lobby to be having people on the payroll to go in there and lobby on their behalf. So I think strengthening civil society organisations to make sure that nature, the environment, koalas, who don't actually have a voice, are genuinely represented in the halls of power. So I think, strengthening those grassroots networks and our grassroots power, and then making sure that representation through civil society is there, is really critical for holding governments to account.
I've only been in the Parliament for just over 3 years, and I couldn't believe just this New South Wales Macquarie Street here. When I first got there, I couldn't believe how many people just have security passes, and I kept saying, who's that dude? Who's that dude? God, who's that? And that's when you realise they've all got their... So I started ringing all my friends, all the activists, and go, do you want a pass? I can sponsor a pass. I realised I had this power. So I just started saying, look, I'll get you a pass, I'll get you a pass. Somebody not long ago in Parliament sort of went, I think the pass system needs to be reviewed. And I'm there thinking, oh no. So I think Macquarie Street right now has the best pass output at the moment that it's had in a long time. So that's accountability, right?
Yeah, I really agree with that. I think accountability comes from every single direction. I think the majority of us here got involved through grassroots campaigning, and I think that's a really accessible way that anyone here can get involved as well. You can get involved through the Sydney Peace Foundation, you can get involved through any of these organisations. Yeah, definitely get involved. It's really the gateway drug in a lot of ways. And maybe Sue will give you a pass one day. Okay, so we're going to have a few more questions and then we'll start to open it up to the floor. But to Sue and Bob, on the international stage, very, very different from grassroots activism, but keen to see how you tie this together. The Australian government has made the right noises. As Jacqui was saying, there's a government that is making the right noises on climate change, and they've stepped up to be the president of negotiations for upcoming UN Climate Change Conference, COP31, it's the 31st one, can you believe? And they say that they're committed to protecting Australia's future through climate action. What evidence is there that there is strong action on the protection of our environment? And how do we establish strong national nature laws and an independent watchdog agency that protects the environment too?
Well, we have to vote in a different government. I mean, the government wanted that COP to be here in Adelaide, but it's going to be in Turkey. So we, in a compromise, one of the senior ministers of Australia gets to chair it, but the world's going to hell in a handbasket. And you just look at the United Nations, and Guterres, the head of the United Nations, is like the Pope in his recent encyclical on artificial intelligence. A much needed voice for sanity. But clearly says the quickest, cheapest way to stop greenhouse gases going into the atmosphere and to absorb them is to end destruction of native forests. And so the Great Koala Park comes along and we're told Labor, in a number of elections, but particularly the last one, is going to protect it. But now, through sleight of hands, the Premier is saying, only if we get carbon credits. That is, if we can balance all the carbon that will go into those forests in northern New South Wales as they grow, by allowing other people to put out that amount of carbon into the atmosphere for a zero return, pulling the rug right from under what the United Nations says ought to be the way to go. And of course, if they do it in New South Wales, I would expect Victoria, which ended native forest logging a couple of years ago, is going to want to say, well, we want a bag of money for that too. Every environmental good is going to become part of what was mooted by the current government to be Australia becoming the green Wall Street of the world. That is, exchange everything for money. Now, we have to work on the fact that the environment is priceless. Just like love and beauty, it is priceless. And we as human beings either protect all national parks, and the Royal National Park here was the second one in the world in 1879, have been protected because people loved nature and wanted these regions in their places to be protected for their spiritual, ecological, recreational, inspirational, educational values. If we now start saying, only if we make money out of it, we've handed across to materialism this great need for us, we human beings, to honour this beautiful planet we've got and to defend it for its own sake, but also for our own heart's sake. So it's a very trying time at the moment, and it's why, again, we can only all do a little bit. We can make donations to the Peace Foundation. I'd love it if there's anybody in the audience who'd like to get paid as a videographer to go for 2 weeks down to where those blockaders are on the Murray River. I'll tell you why. Because while we were talking with them, and we had a lovely bowl of soup around the campfire they had there, there's wood ducks flying off the river up into the trees and nesting. And those trees are going. And I'd love it, as with the Franklin and Terania Creek, it's when everybody gets to see what's going on, that places like that are saved. So I hope somebody will come. They haven't been able to get such a film going, and it's very important to allow nature to speak for itself. But very exciting, full of prospect. We just need to organise it a bit better. And that's the same with ending the remarkable failure of Australian governments who've held back international environment agreements over the years and made us one of the most polluting per capita nations on earth, particularly if you count, as you should, our export of gas and coal, let alone those wood chips, which are going to turn into greenhouse gases as well. So big change required there, and we need somebody coming along who's got heart instead of just a bag of money at the core of their principles as a leader.
So Australia is not only just the third biggest emitter in the world, if you include exports of coal and gas, we also have some of the highest rates of arrests at climate protests. So, Sue, with your background in climate defence, you also sit as chair of Climate Defenders Australia at the moment. What challenges do defenders face right now in Australia?
Yeah, look, it's quite hard compared to what it was when Bob was first getting dragged off down the river and spending time behind bars. Look, it is really challenging. We have seen tranche after tranche of anti-protest laws being passed by the government. We thought here in New South Wales, the last coalition government had kind of reached the high point, and then of course we were incredibly disappointed when the Minns Labor government got in. They introduced tranche after tranche after tranche of anti-protest laws, and we've challenged a number of those in the Supreme Court and won, because we do, fortunately, it's amazing, isn't it? The best part of the Australian Constitution is the bit that's not in there, the implied freedom of political communication. Because it's the bit that we're able to go to the courts and say, hey, if a state tries to overreach and stifle protest and the freedom of political communication, then those laws will be struck down ultimately by our higher courts. Chris Minns has done that on 2 occasions, and we've gone to court and we've challenged them on both occasions, and we've won on both occasions. We know this is not just about turning up and locking on or standing in the way. This is about our right to talk. It's about our freedom to express our dissent verbally, whether it's against Israel's genocide of the Palestinian people in Gaza, our right to speak these things on the streets when we come together. But right now, we have seen some pretty brave, ferocious, incredible climate activism in New South Wales, whether it's been at the Newcastle port with the fabulous effort of Rising Tide. I know that many of you would have participated in those incredible, the people's blockade of the world's largest coal port. And then we've seen those other incredible, smaller strategic actions where people have done all sorts of wild things to stop, to draw attention to the climate crisis. But the reality is, as the laws have escalated, we have organised and we have mobilised and we have created a fabulous civil society institution called Climate Defenders Australia. We knew we could see this real growing need to have good quality, strong, strategic legal representation. And again, if you read Bob's book, you will know that it's internationally, it's really hard. Climate defenders and environmental defenders in other jurisdictions, in other countries, disappear off the face of the earth, like they disappear. They get killed, and it is dangerous work. We mobilised here and we have organised, and we've got a fabulous growing group of lawyers at Climate Defenders Australia. You would have seen just yesterday a resoundingly brilliant result challenging Woodside in Western Australia, where Woodside was coming with a slap suit, you know that, the strategic litigation against public participation. It's designed by big corporations to use the courts to lock up the time of activists, take them on, stop them from engaging, and Climate Defenders Australia represented brave young people, the ones who did the smelly thing in the Woodside, you saw that, the big stink bomb in Woodside's headquarters, and they won. They challenged, they fought back, and they won. Because when we do organise, and we are smart, and we
back ourselves and we believe in ourselves and we organise together because we are right. We're on the right side of history when we're fighting back the exploiters, the polluters, and the greed. And when we do organise and fight back, we win. And we need to keep backing ourselves. And I just wanted to say about the forest issue. It's incredible, isn't it? It's like we're taking the loggers. The vision right now for the Minns Labor government is we're taking the loggers out of the forest finally after 200 years. We're taking those exploiters out, but now we're going to let the other exploiters in, the ones that want to buy the carbon in the forest so they can keep doing their fossil fuels. I mean, it's this notion, isn't it? It's about exploitation, and how do we end the era of exploitation of ourselves, of our natural resources, of each other. I know we can do it.
Amazing. Well, you've got a bit of a taste of our panel now. We will open questions to the floor. I think we hopefully will have time for 2. And the incredible thing about questions is that they all end in question marks. So if you have a statement, maybe think about how it could be a question instead. Just a light encouragement. But we have this one at the front over here. That is a question. I can run.
Yeah.
Hi. Thanks for all of that. You mentioned COP before, and we here are all representing the Tibet movement, and you spoke about the Dalai Lama. China's at the moment, damming rivers in Tibet at an enormous rate, and they're calling it hydro dams, they're calling it green energy, They're also mining Tibet. Lithium is found in Tibet and is mined and is going into EV batteries and things like that. So again, they're calling it part of the green transition. And I find that it's just so difficult to make the kind of headways that you want to make because, yes, in Tibet, environmental defenders are arrested and tortured, they disappear. And also at places like COP, Tibet can't even get in the door, occupied people who are occupied by other states don't even have a voice to speak in these kind of forums. And so my question is just like, how can we address that kind of issue? The issue, yes, it is the billionaires, but it's also the occupiers who are just, oppressing people and stealing their lands and resources.
A very fine question, because billionaires aren't foreign to a communist China, which now has more billionaires in Beijing than there are in New York. Same mentality working against and repressing the people of Tibet and the Yalan Tsampo Dam, arguably the biggest destruction of wild nature in history by such a dam, is alleged to be proceeding with the world hardly knowing about it. And, I went to Tibet in 1997 or 8 and afterwards came back and spoke about the repression there, and I tried to see a nun who had been tortured in jail, and she got out, but had to avoid that meeting. I had more yak butter tea waiting in that cafe. I was swollen at the gills with yak butter tea. They kept filling up. Lovely people, but she didn't come because she realised she was being followed by 2 other men. And then her sister gave me, or a woman, I don't know, gave me a little note in the square. It just said, important person from elsewhere, please help save our Tibet, please get our Dalai Lama back, please don't forget us. And there is a great danger of us forgetting Tibet. I'm old enough to remember the takeover of Tibet in 1958-9, and the Dalai Lama as a 19-year-old escaping over the Himalayas with others in the snow and wondering, why isn't Australia doing something? But it's the way of the world. So the fact that you've asked that question, the fact that the spirit of Tibet is still alive in extraordinary. Sue was just talking about how easy it is for us compared with other people is a noble thing, and we just have to do. In my case, was writing a little letter about the Aung San Po to the Australian Financial Review because there's no coverage being given to it, and thank them they printed it. But we have to know that that's there. And I go when I shouldn't be getting commercial, but when I go to Bunnings and see nearly everything made in China, I'm very, very driven to go back to the tip shop and see what I can find there. Not because the Chinese people are phenomenally wonderful, lovely people. It's the bosses who are not yet again. And one of these days there'll be a reckoning there, but it hasn't come yet. And meantime, the spirit of the Tibetans is one of those things I gain a great lot from. I haven't answered your question well, but I thank you for it.
I just wanted to pick up on one part of your question there, which is about these projects that are very destructive for the environment and being labelled renewable energy projects. I think that's a real danger, and it's something that we have to be very vigilant about and very alert to. And it's an issue here in New South Wales as well, where the Nature Conservation Council, alongside the EDO, has just been in the Land and Environment Court all week this week, defending a biomass power station in New South Wales that wants to clear and burn native vegetation and call it renewable energy. So, it's a devastating, concept coming out of that you're talking about in China, but it's alive in other parts of the world. So I just think, we need to acknowledge our privilege to be able to speak up against these projects and be really vigilant to it, and where we do have privilege and ability and where we can speak out in the safety of living in Australia, if you have those privileges, then I think we absolutely have to use them.
And can I just say on that so quickly, and I'm sorry I'm being terribly radical and spontaneous here, but I keep hearing, because I'm shamelessly a Greens MP, I keep getting this thing that people say about, oh, it's the Greens, you're letting the perfect get in the way of the good, or, this is this mantra I get. I say we must demand better, because this is how greenwashing gets in. This is how climate spin becomes a thing, because we go, oh no, but it's good, isn't it? It's better. It's definitely better than the other one, isn't it? It's like, no, it's actually not. Let's go for what we know we can get, and let's do the real thing. Let's do the hard thing, and let's demand justice. It's not about perfect, it's not about good, it's what is justice and what is exploitation.
While we find our next, no.
We're 7:30.
Okay, we're at 7:30, sorry. Okay, we're going to end on one closing question. Speaking of people who demand the highest level of ambition, we have seen huge waves of young people all across the world, whether it's Greta Thunberg, it's the protests that are happening in India right now, there's protests that have been happening in Nepal led by Gen Z. Young people all across the world have been connecting the dots between war, genocide, and ecocide. I'd love to hear from you all very briefly. We'll start with you, Jacqui, and move our way down. What is the vital role of young people in social movements and defiance?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I had the immense privilege of being involved in the School Strike for Climate. I wasn't a school student, but I was supporting the school students back in 2019 and saw 80,000 people turn out in the domain, which was incredibly inspiring. And I think seeing future generations move to action and seeing how articulate and informed and passionate they are is incredibly inspiring. And Bob, when you were speaking earlier, you were talking about the inspiration that you bring, and sort of, I think you were providing great inspiration for young people in the room. But I think I work for an institution that's been around for 70 years, and I just want to flip that on its head a bit, because a lot of the people who are involved in the network of the Nature Conservation Council, the people who come to our events and the people who take the action, are people who are much, much older than me, and I draw my inspiration from them. Because they've been doing this work, they have been fighting these fights for decades. I take my inspiration from people like Bob and Sue, who, have come before me, from people like Judy and Jeff Lambert, who I know have this long and rich history of standing up for our environment. And I think, you know, young people are often divided between many responsibilities, intense economic pressures, time, you know, is just something that's very precious. And it's getting, you know, when I was at university, I didn't really have to work very much. You know, I got a government allowance. I was able to be an activist and manage my degree, but I know that's not the case anymore for a lot of young people. But truly, I'm so inspired by the people that I get to work with every day at NCC who have been doing this for a long time, and they still do it. And I really hope, you know, Bob, that in 50 years' time that I'm still, you know, that I'm as active as you are. And I think that we really, we have to remember that it's really important to bring young people into our movement. But I also really look up to the elders of our movement and the people who've sustained this action. And they're here for the long fight, and I'm definitely here for the long fight. So that's where I get my inspiration.
I know I've got too many kids that I've been responsible for, and grandkids and godchildren and all of that. One of them once said to me, "Mum, you know, I'm not sure about all this stuff." And she's followed my whole career, you know, environmental lawyer, locked on to bulldozers, now an MP. And I said, "What do you mean, Dad?" And she goes, "Oh, you know, you're a reformist." And I said, "What do you mean? What? Of course I'm a reformist." She goes, "Mum, you know, it's like, it's end of times. Like, you know, we're at end of times." And I sort of went, "Oh my gosh," you know. And I said, "Well, what am I meant to do?" And she said, "You've just got to kind of get more radical, Mum." And I was like, "Okay, this is good." And, you know, I just think the thing that inspires me the absolute most, and the things I see in young people, is when they are allowed to be wild and expressive, when they're allowed to be angry, when they're allowed to be difficult and obnoxious. And, you know, we do this thing as old people. We go, "Oh, we're all the young people." It's like, well, you haven't made space for them. You haven't opened the doors. You haven't invited them properly. You haven't made the space they want to be in. And that is our job. And I think we all must. You've got to get out there. You've got to find the koalas in the trees with the kids. You've got to get on the ground still and kneel around, whether it's young kids, old kids. This is how we do it. We've got to show them the excitement, the power of action and defiance, and the beauty of difficulty and the chaos that we're living in. Embrace it. Give them the love, show them the joy, express that connection is everything, and let them be wild, because kids and young people are our connection to our wildness, but most importantly, they are the connection to love and purpose. And if we are not reciprocating that in all of our interactions with young people, giving them the time, hearing them out, listening to what they're saying, then, yeah, what is the future?
On that, there's a little bit in the book about this. It's only a small handful of people that changed the world. The suffragettes did it. The slavery abolitionists did it. The people getting kids out of mines and putting them into schools did it. And now it's our turn with saving what's left of the environmental planet. And so we don't have to have 100% of young people. They're going to be the people who are going to make this change. It's about 5% of them. And they're there, and they're brilliant, and they know what they're doing, and they need to be encouraged. And the first attribute for somebody to stand for Parliament is to say, "Oh no, that's not for me." You've spotted somebody who's going to be a perfect politician. And if any of us older folk who are on a good income can do anything, it's to sponsor young activist groups for the environment, for the arts, for social change. Tax deductible if you can, because some of the money from AUKUS might end up going to saving the planet. But you know, and not to be grim about things. I know times are grim. We all know that. But we owe it to young people to give them the ability to be defiant, to be caring, caring and to be optimistic. And that optimism feeds on itself. Though a good yarn about how hard people have had it in the past, you might look hard for you too, but you can be part of changing this planet and giving it the brilliant future, the joyride into the future that we all owe to every past generation, and we need to imbue into the next generation. They can change things around, and they will change it around as long as we encourage them to, with a smile on our face and maybe a banknote or two into their organisation.
Thank you everybody so much. It's a real shame that we've run out of time. I'm sure you had many more questions, and certainly many more questions came in through the registration, and very sorry we didn't get to them. But look, my biggest thanks goes to everybody here tonight for just being here. You know, these sort of communities is where we draw strength. You know, to stand up and defy those bad laws, and hold on to the idea that the arc of the moral universe will hopefully eventually bend towards justice. And you know, there is hope. I mean, we're all here tonight. We're listening to a beautiful panel a fantastic panel of speakers. There are more and more people are refusing to turn their heads to injustice and to the destruction of our natural world. And as Bob says, this is all we have. You know, this is our reality. The sticker, please go grab one. These are free outside with the Bob Brown on the Bob Brown Foundation table. So I'd love to thank all the speakers and the panelists. Jacqui, Sue, Bob, Grace, thank you for moderating so brilliantly. We were going to have, you might have seen on the invitation, Coco perform. He is a hip-hop performer. He is not able to be here, unfortunately for us, very fortunately for him. His partner has gone into labour. Their first baby, so that is a pretty good excuse for not being here. I'd like to thank all our donors, supporters, the Mighty Teachers Federation. Thank you, I know you're up there. There we are now, where the Sydney Peace Foundation is now housed. The young people, to the interns, thank you for putting together, helping with today and making this event successful. Special shout out again to Cabramatta High. Cabramatta has been a partner of the Peace Foundation for over 20 years. A flyer around for our 2026 Sydney Peace Prize award ceremony and lecture on the 12th of November. We hope you'll be able to join us. This year it's going to Australian human rights lawyer, the wonderful Jennifer Robinson, whose work spans gender justice, climate justice, press freedom and the rights of marginalised communities. And last year Jen represented the Republic of Vanuatu in a landmark climate ruling that found that countries failing to tackle climate change risked breaking international law. So please do join us in November. And finally to Bob, your lifetime of activism is a total inspiration. And you know, I often think of the words of American poet and writer Alice Walker, who says, "Activism is the rent we pay for living on this planet." And you know, it is fulfilling, it does bring happiness, and it also makes me think that why we are all here, and I will quote a passage from your book, Defiance, where you quote another poet. And this is a very short section because we're actually well over time, but my great-grandchildren ask me in dreams, "What did you do when the planet was plundered? What did you do when the earth was unravelling? Surely you did something when the seasons started failing, as the mammals, reptiles and birds were all dying? Did you fill the streets with protest when democracy was stolen? What did you do once you knew?" So thank you for coming. Please buy Bob's book outside if you can. There's also the table from the table for the Bob Brown Foundation. And thank you. Here's to happy protesting and